Welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Welcome back to Tomboy Official. Here on this podcast, we talk about gender-related topics, and we talk about LGBTQ plus related topics, and just in general, we talk about a lot of social and cultural things. So thanks for tuning back in. So, I have permission to talk about a conversation that I've been involved in for, I don't know how long. Because it's kind of like an off and on thing. But, yeah, it's okay. It's fine for me to post this. It's just interesting. Kind of racking my brain about it. So let me see. So it's kind of like how should I say, a little bit about like how the world is run. I kind of have a difference of viewpoint from a different person, and I can't really tell if it's a minority thing or not. And so the person I'm talking to, I'm not saying that like, you know, they do or don't have any problems or whatever. Like, everyone has their own stuff that they're coming into situations with. But this person, you know, I really value their opinions on things, and their outlook on life. And I'm not really one to like write off people just because they have a difference of opinion. But you know, a lot of times, you know, people don't agree on things. And I think it's because, you know, we come at things from a different perspective in the world. So, you know, talking to someone who's a Caucasian, heterosexual, cisgender male, and then myself being a Black and African-American female who's not a straight person, you know, it's like we're definitely going to be coming from very different angles on things. So we were talking about trans rights overall. That was where the conversation kind of began. But I mean, we talk to each other in person, we talk to each other on the phone, we kind of have like deep philosophical text conversations, and then there are other online platforms where we kind of discuss things and happen to be in the same like discussion groups and things. And I mean, I'm not talking crap about like this person's perspective, and they said I can post about this conversation. I'm sending them the link. I can post about this conversation so long as you know, they get the link, and so long as, you know, if they feel like they want to provide their own opinions, then they totally have the floor. I'll totally post either with them or let them solo send me any kind of audio clip. I won't even listen to it first, and I'll just upload it without editing. I mean, as you guys know, I don't edit anyway, so that's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna edit it anyways. But yeah, so I was kind of just like talking about my week, talking about, you know, I was kind of happy that one of my friends, you know, got top surgery, and that's kind of, you know, I was kind of like talking about like all the recent crappy situations that I've gone through. And you know, I know this person, their kind of style of talking isn't really like personal experiences, like stories about like recent updates. It's more like very general, like concepts about how the world can be unfair. So usually it's like when we're talking, it's not about a specific topic, a specific issue. It's kind of just like concepts, not really attached to anything. But I can kind of tell it's like related to maybe like an experience that just came up or something. But it's more so just, I think their comfort level of describing things kind of goes to the theoretical a lot more than to like examples. And so, we're talking about like trans related, topics, and, I'm trying to like explain like, like I'm happy for my friends. Like, we talk a lot about like sexuality and gender identity and things like that. But it's kind of more like, I kind of know that this person isn't gay. And I think that they're pretty open-minded. They're not trying to really like like put people down. They kind of don't believe in that. But at the same time, it's like kind of hard to talk about the theoretical when I'm talking about like personal experience with somebody or whatever. So I was basically, just kind of explaining, because it was like, explain your experience, because like, sometimes people don't really know really what I'm saying. Sometimes I don't freaking know what I'm saying, let's be real. But sometimes I can be pretty vague too and not really describe what I'm trying to say in detail. And I've gotten this way because I'm better now than I was like probably like 8 years ago or something. Like basically, it's always been kind of hard for me to like talk about my own life. Like I've always been different from the people around me, like in a lot of different ways. The way I think, the way I look, the way I dress, the way I act, my interests. Like there's not too much that's stereotypical about me. So that kind of, in a way, is fun and good and great, but makes life a little hard to navigate, because I feel like it throws people way off and they don't know what to do with it. And then it's kind of like, okay, like I feel like we can have like a difference of opinion and not be like not friends, like, or start hating each other or have to like block or ghost each other or whatever. I'm not really into that. So it's like, okay, me and this person are kind of talking about like the differences. So, a lot of times their focus is on, I don't want to call it toxic masculinity, but I think it's what most people would label as what they call toxic masculinity. I understand toxic masculinity. I'm not saying it's like a good thing, but the reason for myself personally why it's hard for me to really use that phrasing is because I feel like a lot of times people only talk about the toxic masculinity. They don't talk about toxic femininity or any other toxic kind of, variations like along that kind of thing. So to me, that gets a little bit of a, it's a little like, okay, we're going to pick on masculinity, but it's like, there's some other stuff that, that we can pick on too. But, I don't know. I kind of feel like weird using that, even though it exists. I just feel like it's not, I don't know, just for me, it just feels weird. Cause it's almost like, to me, it almost assumes that males are more so toxic, related to maybe like gender presentation related things. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's false. I don't know if it's true. I just don't feel like it's like I've never really heard people use toxic femininity as like an explanation for the way somebody's being. But it's kind of my own thing. So I guess if people, use that, I guess that makes sense to say things that people understand what you're talking about. So, like that's kind of the topics that he usually talks about is like jealousy, toxic masculinity, control. So we get into this discussion about, I'm kind of like trying to explain, like, I don't really see like heterosexual straight culture to be very understanding of non-heterosexual, non-straight culture. And we kind of got to that topic, but initially we were talking about our weeks, and that one of my that I know someone who's a trans friend that got a top surgery, and I was kind of explaining what that means and how it's not easy to get, and we were kind of talking about like what we think about people getting the surgeries and things. And I know from this person's perspective, he says that a lot of people might regret it later on, and I'm kind of like, I know, but I mean, I don't know, I don't want to say so what, but kind of so what, it's like, if somebody else gets some other kind of procedure done, usually doctors aren't concerned about whether or not they're going to regret it. Like, they're not holding it against you to get what you need to get done because you might regret it later. Like, usually they're not barring you from doing it. And I was kind of saying, like, it's kind of a fine line between, like, is the doctor not doing this because of concern, or are they not doing it out of discrimination? Like, those are kind of topics we were discussing. And we were also discussing our perspectives on, like, this is like a conversation over multiple days, so it's like really hard to like remember the order of things. But because I was kind of talking about like my experiences. We started talking about like dating. I was talking about the experiences dating trans people. I myself am not a trans person, but I talked about a lot of my experiences with dating trans people, and how just like in general society, it's like, why on earth are trans people treated differently when in the majority of situations that trans people are in, there's not really even like a sexual context to it, or any reason why anybody should have any concern about a person being trans. If I'm a trans person and I'm at McDonald's ordering fries, why can't the cashier just get my freaking fries? Like, why does it have to be like a whole thing? You know what I mean? If I'm a trans person and I want to try on some makeup, why does it matter, what I look like or who I'm with and what they look like? Like, just things like that are just like, coming across servers of different kinds, and like just being in public in general, and just the kind of like reactions that people have. It's like, what does your gender matter in a lot of the different types of situations? What does it matter in the kind of place where you want to sit down and have drinks? What does your gender matter in the place where you want to go and shop and get your groceries? Like, your gender doesn't matter in any of that kind of stuff. But then again, it's like, it matters when you're, when you're a trans person. It matters, to a lot of people. And it's kind of confusing why, and so I was kind of talking about that, how it's like, if I walk into a place, nobody's really gonna try to serve me differently. Like, maybe because of my clothing style, maybe because of my race, but that's not like too, you know, common, honestly. And if they are doing it, it's not obvious. Like, and so I wonder about that. I wonder about just in general with it's been a long day, guys. Just in general with like kind of I'm trying to think of what we were talking about next. Like, yeah, I was kind of saying, like, yeah, a lot of times your gender isn't really going to matter in a lot of things that you're doing. Unless, you know, when you're dating, it might matter to a lot of people. If you're doing sexual things, that might matter to a lot of people. Even to some people, it matters if you're in a bathroom together or in a locker room together. I mean, I don't think it really needs to matter. I mean, I don't really care, but it's like I get that some people do care. But, you know, outside of those places, it's kind of like weird that somebody needs to be like so clear about a person's gender. It needs to meet kind of like what they expect in general society, kind of like what is expected. No surprises need to come from anywhere for anybody. Related to gender, it's like, why, you know, why does it even happen, you know? And then, you know, I was kind of speaking to, you know, if I'm dating someone, you know, and I'm maybe meeting someone like online, for example, like keep it easy, go online, you know, talk to somebody that seems interesting enough that you want to meet them in person, you know, and that you have some kind of commonalities and kind of vibe, you know. I kind of thought about that and I was like, okay, you know, and I haven't done enough straight dating to really super speak to this, but the way I kind of am observing things, it seems that, you know, say for example, if I'm a queer woman on a dating website looking for other queer women, or even just keeping it just strictly like lesbian only and women that don't date anybody but just women only, and you know, even within those women who only date women, there's a lot of variation, right? There's a lot of, you know, still like gender presentation related things, a lot of like just a lot of differences, like that you can't just, you know, predict or expect without like a conversation about it, right? And I feel like in queer culture, it's way more common to be having conversations about all these like diverse aspects of different things about you related to your gender, even if you are the same gender. There's something about it in queer culture. People don't really assume as much all the time. You know, and I think that happens because a lot of the stereotypes are kind of removed. It's like, well, if I'm dressing like this and another person's dressing like that, and then we're both like, but yeah, we're women and we both identify as female women, and, you know, we both date women, and it's like we can look like completely different from one another and have different interests, you know, on different kind of levels. And we kind of just notice diversity between even the two of us, versus I feel like maybe in straight couples, it's like a lot of it's chalked up to, oh, you're a guy or you're a girl. you're a man, you're a woman. So we just kind of call it like that. I don't know if straight people have a lot of like gender variation type of conversations. I've never really heard any of my straight friends mention that their boyfriends have spoken to them about gender roles and things like that. Like, not even just roles, but more so like presentation and all kinds of different, like thought processes about things. I think a lot of it's kind of like assumed. Or maybe it's just noticeable. I don't really know, but it just seems different. Like, I can't imagine going into a dating relationship, dating a woman, and just being like, I don't really like ask you any questions, about like gender related things, even though I see you're a woman and I know you're a woman and I know how you identify, and just leaving it as at that and never asking about it. To me, that would be weird. But it's because, I date a lot of different types of people with different types of varying gender related things going on, and they don't, there's not really the whole like, you look like this, therefore I know you're gonna be like this. There's not a lot of that in my life anyways. And so I think it kind of carries over, into dating. And then I think a lot of people who are queer people kind of recognize that. I don't know in like cis straight culture if it's really like that. Not so much. It doesn't seem like it is, but it's kind of speculation on my end. It's nothing I've never really heard of it. The only time I've kind of heard of it is when it's like how they say like stay-at-home dads. That's kind of more so where I've heard of it. But I don't really know. So, that conversation kind of led into more of like, where we were kind of not really too much on the same page about something, where I kind of made a comment where I was like, I think a lot of these things, are happening in society, but like the rules and the policies and the system hasn't really caught up to it. It's usually like cis straight people that are kind of running the world, that are making all of these concepts, like all these policies that say, that somebody can or cannot get a surgery, or that say that, gay marriage is wrong, or that say this or that, and then my friend believes that that's not necessarily a good way of thinking about the world, because in reality the world isn't run by hetero cis people, and in fact it's not run by anybody, and we kind of have more power over things than what we are, maybe what we feel, or what we're being told, or what we're being allowed. But I it's kind of hard for me to see things that way. I mean, from a minority perspective, it's not really that the world is necessarily like forcing you into a corner, but if there's nobody who looks like you that's making policies, unless you're like protesting and like really, struggling to get out of that corner, you're, you kind of have to make waves, right? Just to get to an equal place in society. Not saying that everybody's not equal, because they are equal, but they're not treated that way necessarily. And I kind of get it. I kind of sort of get it, that we're not, we're not really victims necessarily, that when it comes to control, it's you know, we're not really being controlled, but there are consequences, you know, to, and there are rules, you know, and there are laws. So, you know, and there are a lot of people who hold the key to a lot of things. It's like, you know, I've talked about it, even just something as simple as algorithms. You know, the people holding the keys to the algorithms set the algorithms in a certain way, in a way that's going to favor them, in a way that's going to favor what they believe in, what they want promoted. And then they're going to flag everything else. They're going to, you know, make it so that everything else that they don't agree with isn't going to be seen. Multiple mainstream platforms do this, you know. It's a form of censorship, but it's not really called that. But, you know, but that's just one example, you know. Like, so there's that. I mean, there's definitely like other examples, but that's probably like the easiest one to use. It's something in my life that just like directly affects things, like on a pretty regular basis. Honestly, it does. But there's also, you know, coming from a perspective of a minority on a lot of different levels. I'm not just saying ethnically, like there are a lot of levels here where I'm like a minority, and there are a lot of levels here where this other person is, you know, not a minority. And so it kind of is like, okay, maybe you think, and maybe in your world that's accurate, but I think we kind of live in different worlds. And I don't think we're ever really going to see eye to eye on it. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily that I think he is wrong for saying what he's saying, because that's his perspective. I mean, that's how the world runs, on his perspective. And it's actually pretty eye-opening to think, I mean, eye-opening to kind of see that, you know, there are people who think that there's not like systems in place that keep certain people from getting to certain places in society at an equal rate, you know, as others are. Like, you know, there was this I don't remember what this video was. And I mean, we can make arguments in every direction, right? But there was this video where they showed a lot of people on a line, on a starting line, and I guess they're going to do a race, right? I think they're on a field, and it's all these, I think they're students. They weren't that old. They looked like they were maybe 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, maybe 20-year-olds. I don't really know. I watched it a long time ago, and they were all on this starting line on like the baseline of a field somewhere, like for some like athletic field of some kind. I can't remember what sport, but I think they were on like a football field maybe, and they had to race. The goal was, you know, you're gonna race to the finish line, but the way you're gonna get there is gonna be taking a step forward if the question applies to your life. So every time they mention something from a position of privilege, everyone who met criteria for that would take a step forward. And then you kind of start seeing more and more who it is that's closer to the start line and who it is that's getting closer and closer to that finish line. It's like, just to catch up, you know, these other people have to do all this other stuff just to get there. So, you know, we're all kind of dealt our lot, right? And so that's kind of something that I think maybe some people can't really see. I mean, it's hard for me to see it from a different perspective because I don't see it in my life. Like, if I didn't see it in my life, it wouldn't be possible for me to really think that way, you know, to think kind of like how I think, you know. So it's kind of interesting. So say, for example, in the video, I don't remember the exact questions, but say, for example, in the video, they're like, I have enough time after school to finish all my homework and, you know, every day. And then, you know, they take a step forward. You know, I've never failed a class before. They take a step forward. You know, my parents have enough money to put me through college, and they take a step forward. I have access to a car. They take a step forward. You know, I know what I want to major in. They take a step forward. You know, all kinds of things that you can think of. You know, like I have savings of like a certain amount. I have a job and I make a certain amount of money. And you just, you know, start talking about like all these things, and, you know, they're saying like I don't have a disability status, you know, like I don't, you know, have to use any kind of government assistance money, and you know, I can afford, you know, to buy all my meals and save and go on a trip and take time off work and buy medicine and things like that. You know, a lot of people, you know, I can afford childcare. There are a lot of things where it's like, you know, how does a person even get ahead if they've got all these other things that it's like they're barely even able to kind of function, you know? I mean, I even talk to people who, even something as simple as, you know, not being able to have paid days off work. I mean, I can't imagine making that decision between being sick and not being able to work because you're literally sick and then not getting paid for it. I mean, to me, that's pretty outrageous. And especially with COVID, you know, it's like there are people who don't get the COVID pay if they get sick. So they get sick and then they have to take however many weeks off work, maybe 2 weeks off work. In some cases, maybe 5 days off work, maybe 10 days off work, whatever your company's policy is. When you get COVID, you can't come back to work. And if there's no remote work option, then you basically just aren't working and don't get paid until you're cleared to come in, either with a positive COVID test negative COVID test, negative now, like to get, you know, you're not testing positive anymore. You're having a negative test, or you, you know, I guess like, I can't remember what mine was. I think it was like 5 days or 10 days from when you got a positive test. I think it was 10 days from the positive test, or something like that. But it's like, that's a lot of time, you know? So I don't really even know, you know, what that looks like. I mean, and if somebody does have a COVID test and they can't take off work, you know, they're likely to go in and then infect everybody. It's kind of like, that doesn't make any sense, right? But, you know, there are a lot of people who can't take paid days off work. Their job doesn't allow it, or maybe they have a lot going on to a point where they use them all. I'm almost in that position. I've been having a lot going on this summer, so I've been taking a lot of days off just to recoup. And this is the lowest PTO balance I've ever had. And it's still something compared to, you know, people who might not have that available. At least I'm still accruing every pay period, and, you know, I still have a few days I can take off if I need to. So it's not that big a deal, but it's kind of like, I think I have like 4 days I can take off now. And usually I have like over 120 hours or something. I tried to keep it at like 80 hours, and then I just kept using them because I was like, I just really can't be at work right now. So I just stopped going for a while. I was like, I just can't. But actually, COVID used like a week of it too, which was unexpected. So, but yeah, I don't really think there's really a conclusion. I don't want to sit here and be like, I'm more right than another person. I feel like I'm more right, obviously, because it's my own opinion. But I mean, I can kind of see another perspective that, you know, I can kind of see, that maybe even having the mindset that there's someone else that's controlling your possibilities. I can even see that as it can be problematic. Like, I think for me, it's not so much like which person, it's more like the systems in place, right? So say, for example, I mentioned algorithms, right? So if I wanted to beat an algorithm, you basically just follow the other people who are very successful in the niche that you want to be successful in. You follow them. You see the most popular ones. Now, if you don't have money to pay for followers or ads and things like that, or to rent stuff out or whatever it may be, you might not have, the best quality looking, you might not have the best quality looking, product or content, but you technically can follow all this stuff. I mean, it's like, even for places where they're like, submit a photo of yourself or whatever. Like, you don't have to submit a real photo. If you have to make a thumbnail of yourself, you can choose to be a blonde male if you want to. You know what I mean? Like, there are ways around things. Like, you don't really have to, be yourself. If you're trying to beat an algorithm, you don't really have to. Like, there are usually ways around it, but, those of us who know about those things, we're just like, I'm choosing to authentically present myself as much as I can. Sometimes I'm like, I don't care if I sound like an idiot and I'm just saying my stupid opinions about things, and then I'm like, oh shoot, that sounded really not like that. Like, maybe I have some prejudice, comments that I make and stuff like that. It's like, I do catch myself and I'm just like, like, that didn't really come out well, and I kind of need to think that through a little bit better. But it's like, I'm not going to edit it out, unless I know that I'm being like overtly offensive and I'm just having a bad day and I'm just like, that wasn't cool, I probably shouldn't be posting that. But it's like, otherwise, I mean, people get to hear my stupid opinions. And so, I learn and grow just like everybody else. I'm not like a special version of person or anything, that's not plagued by all the stuff that everyone in society is kind of plagued by. Like, I still, have to challenge my own thinking on stuff too. But it can be really hard to challenge my thinking when there's stuff in front of me that I don't see. Sometimes I'm just not seeing it. It's kind of weird too. It's actually really kind of weird. But I mean, I'm always happy to have the conversation. but I don't think it's really possible for everyone to see the same viewpoint on things if they're coming from different areas of the start line, if you want to put it that way. I really don't know if it's possible, I mean, if we're all looking at the same finish line from like a different distance, it's not going to look exactly the same. But I don't know. I mean, I guess arguments in the other way would definitely be, I mean, there are programs for minorities that don't really exist for non-minorities. So there's programs like Lesbians Who Tech. They have like a whole, training program that people can apply for if they're non-binary, if they're gay, lesbian, queer, genderqueer, trans. But that excludes a lot of other people too. And it's a pretty good program, it's not like shabby. You get all kinds of networking opportunities and everything. I don't think cis gay males can join. I don't know if they have programs. I haven't looked. I haven't really searched for that at all. But yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, it's always going to be like challenging topics. Like, I think it's not just a black or white thing, nothing's really black or white. Even opinions aren't really black or white. Like, the more, at least for myself, the more I break down things with the way I think about them. I mean, I'm not really trying to have no opinions or no strong opinions, but it's kind of like, a lot of my strong opinions are based on my experiences. It's hard to really have a strong opinion without an experience attached to it, like, I don't think I've really witnessed, other than, so the only exception I would say that I have witnessed how it can kind of, well, two things, I'll put it this way. There are two things that I've noticed that can sway different things in my life. One is education, and two is finances. Now, I can explain that. So, and just so people know, it's not like I'm like rolling in it. I'm not like ritzy over here, I'm not, like, as much as I complain about rent, you guys should know, like, I'm not like, I wouldn't consider myself wealthy. I work, I can work and do my job and get bonuses doing my job, and it's steady pay, with benefits. I mean, does it pay enough for me to live the way that I want to? My day job does not, but also it's solid, it's recession proof, it's pandemic proof, overall, other than recession, well, it's recession proof as in I'm not going to lose my job because of the recession. It's not recession proof as in like the money part, but the pay isn't that great, but also because it's contract based, and so unless our company and positions in that company, unless the budgeted pay rate changes through a contract, we don't get raises. Like, we don't just get raises every year, like by a certain percentage. We have to wait for the year that the contract gets renewed and see if our individual position gets approved for a raise. And then everyone in that position gets that raise to that specific rate. There are exceptions, because I talk to people, so there are exceptions. I do know people who I've had the same role as who got more money than I did. That either comes from starting at a later date, because the contract is a little different for a later date versus when you started at an earlier date. And also certain staff, for some reason, do get more money. And I don't know why that is. And I know a lot of us don't really talk about it, but I do know what a lot of people were getting paid. I know before the pandemic, when I was at another job, I know before the pandemic, when the majority of people I worked with were getting $19 to $19.50, there were people making about $23, $24 an hour. And someone else I knew making like $27 an hour. And some of the leads I knew who weren't even in those positions were making under $20 an hour. And so I know the pay rates aren't exactly equal, but overall, they're at a certain rate. Overall. So that's one thing that I've noticed. They do say that though, but I have noticed that everyone does kind of make a little different money. So that is something that's a little strange to me. But overall, we don't really get raises like that. Like, I've known people who had to beg for 25 cents for a raise or 50 cents for a raise and got denied. Like, not everybody gets raised. Like, not even whole dollars. Just like cents. Like, not even a whole dollar raise, And for the intensive kind of work we do, I mean, give me $1. Like, it's like $8 a day. Like, come on. And it's taxed anyways. You're not even getting the full $8. It's actually less than $8. It's like, come on, dude. Like, but I don't know. If companies can't even meet you at $8 or $4 or, $2 extra a day before taxes, it's like, and all the other deductions, like, you're basically not even getting a full buck. I mean, it's ridiculous, honestly. But I mean, every bit does count. I'm just saying, like, in the grander scheme of things, it's like, that's really not a lot of money. Stop, filling the snacks and stuff, and stop buying coffee and pay your employees. Stop bringing Krispy Kreme donuts every Friday and just, like, give the money to the employees. But I don't know, like, so I would say when it comes to education, I have noticed people kind of change their tone. Like, I don't throw it around like that. Like, I'm not even like, I don't know. I kind of just like stumbled into whatever the heck I'm doing. And like, I've had things go wrong in my life too, but it's like, I did have opportunities to go to schools, regardless of my family's money situation. They found a way for us to go to school and get it paid for, no matter how questionable the methods may have been at times. I got educated. And so, at the end of the day, I've got degrees, and I have noticed some people treat me differently when they notice that I was getting, that I kind of had a certain education, as far as degrees are concerned. And then also financially, like I mentioned, like I have stable work, and it's remote work, so I'm pretty flexible as far as like living options, as long as I can get where I need to get at the times when I need to be there, which isn't 8 hours every single day, But, it could take some planning, but as long as I can get there, I'm fine. I can still work. It's not an issue. Um, I I never really like I really don't talk too much about like what I do for a living. When I meet people, I don't really talk about my education when I meet people. I don't really talk much about finances when I meet people. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I just don't talk about when I meet people. And I practically live like a hobo. So, nobody really would know my money situation. I am the cheapest person you'll ever meet. I don't tend to splurge. The only place I really kind of splurge is like a few months out of the year for snowboarding. I will spend a fortune going out of town, buying new gear, getting lift tickets and like going to different resorts and, going to hotels and all that kind of stuff. I will spend money doing these things. Um, I don't mind spending money doing these things. I like to do these things. It's what makes me happy a lot of the the crappy weather times of year. But um, I kind of save to go do that. I save money, and my money is saved for certain kind of categories of stuff that I'm kind of working on for the future. Um, like I'm working on it now, but it's like the money's gonna go towards it a lot of times in the future. Um, but you know, it is a privileged position to be able to save, even though, like I said, I'm not like rolling in it, but it's like I'm also not like negative like a few $100s every month before the rent's due, and then right when the paycheck comes in, I gotta go find a way to pay the rent and then have no money. I mean, I've definitely been in positions where it's like, dude, I need to do something about my finances, but I've always been in a position where I've been able to kind of eventually get it together. And also I have a very low standard for like quality of living, let's be real. Like, I have a backup option of where I can live, and so I can put up with some pretty shitty environments, because it's like, well, if worst comes to worst, I'm just going to leave and go there, which is what I did. So it's kind of like, I have like a backup. Like, a lot of people don't have that. Like, if they have a shitty roommate, they have a shitty roommate. If they need to make choices to live like in a hostel or something that's going to be super cheap for them, that's going to have to be the option. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's like, I do notice that, even as much as I can complain about, things that I experienced, I do have some privilege in some ways, even if it's not like a lot, it is some, and so I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, whatever, I'm not, like, I'm not better than the homeless clients I work with. I'm not better than, the boss who runs the company. I'm not better than, the person who tries to scam call me. I'm not better than any of these people, like, I'm just a human like everybody else. But, like I said, we're all dealt different cards. We're all dealt a different lot in life, and we kind of just start where we're starting. And then you know, we can make a way to progress towards what we're doing, but we're starting at different places. I don't think it's maybe like the best thing to really focus on, like, I'm starting at the 10-yard line instead of the 50. Like, I'm never gonna get to, I'm never gonna get over there. I'm never gonna get to the other side. Like, I'm looking ahead, and there's so many people ahead of me, and I'm still back here. And every time, it takes me to move, like, however many yards, like, everyone else is moving, like, at a faster rate. I mean, that might be the reality, like, but I mean, to focus on it and to put the energy into that for too long, I mean, I think the energy is best spent trying to problem solve. And that sounds kind of dismissive, I guess. But I do believe that, or else I wouldn't work on the things that I work on. The way I see things is, if you can't problem solve it yourself, get to a position where you can pay somebody who can without getting scammed. That's kind of my theory on things. Easier said than done, right? But it's like, you know, like everybody sacrifices somewhere. I mean, even people who do come from privileged positions, whether they're white or hetero or whatever they are, you know, they have minority status in some places too. So I can see that, you know, like I don't want to like sit here and try to like, you know, try to say that I'm just like gonna try to make an argument for my own position on things, because it is very one-sided. You know, I'm not on a call or on a I'm not podcasting with somebody at this very moment who's like talking about their perspectives, you know. But also they didn't really give their perspectives, so I don't really know where that perspective is specifically coming from. I know where my perspective was coming from is that this is what I see. I mean, if these people are the ones in charge, you know, they're not even looking at this other stuff. You know, they're not looking at the way we do things as a different type of people. They're not. It doesn't really, they're not really required to look at it. It doesn't really affect them to not look at it. So, I mean, it doesn't affect them. Yeah, it doesn't affect them to not look at it. So why would they do it if it, you know, could potentially, you know, jeopardize their own practice or create liability for them? I mean, like, I don't know, like what would be their advantage at like advocating for something that, you know, a lot of people don't understand. I mean, advocating for minorities, like I think it's a great thing to do. I think people should advocate for those who might not have a louder voice. I think it's one of the better things to do, but you know, everybody's trying to make their own way too, so sometimes I do understand, you know, if somebody doesn't want to rock the boat and be like, well, I'm just going to do it this way now. And, you know, it is kind of risky for people sometimes. But, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it's like people have to just be allies and just, you know, step out of themselves and just do what they need to do for people, for there to be progress. You know, if everybody thinks like, okay, like I'm not willing to like lose any status for, you know, advocating for others. I mean, if everybody thinks like that, then nothing's ever really going to be done. And I think people with different minority status can, you know, get to whatever goals and finish line that they're trying to get to. It just, you know, it's hard to really acknowledge how hard it is when people are at different, you know, however many yards from the goal, you know, like it's really just hard to see from other people's perspectives, because none of us can live anybody else's life. One of my favorite books, and there's a movie of it too, I've probably talked about it, but one of my favorite books and like the old black and white film movie of it, is called Black Like Me. You can watch it on YouTube. There's like a free version of it on there. It's like a bootleg YouTube thing, but it's like a free version called Black Like Me, and it's basically a white guy who takes some kind of medicine or something to turn himself so his skin looks darker, and he just experiences what it's like, and he basically has like an emotional breakdown, spoiler alert, at the end, because he can't really handle it. But yeah, if everyone could do that with their experiences, in which we can't all do that with our experiences, but if that was possible, that would be pretty interesting to try to really test perspectives. But I don't know. It's good food for thought, and thanks for listening.